I read a lot of 2022 romance releases, and here are the books that are going to be worth your time. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Now for today's video, I thought I would do a part 2 or a continuation of my video that I put out a couple months ago where I read a bunch of 2022 romance releases. I'm giving you my honest opinion and letting you know which are the books that you actually have to put on your radar and your TBR, and maybe which ones are the ones that you need to bump it lower or possibly take off your TBR. So the first book that I want to talk about is this one called As Seen on TV by Meredith Shore. Now this one was published maybe earlier this year. I completely forgot the release date already, but it just recently became available in my library for borrowing purposes, and I was very excited to kind of just jump into it. I had no expectations for it because I just never heard about anybody talking about this book, but I was curious to see if this book would be one of those under the radar romances that would turn out to be one of my favorite romances of the year. Now this one is essentially about our heroine who lives with her mother, and they both live in a very rent-controlled apartment in New York City, in the big city in Manhattan. They are both single because they had some rocky relationships in the past. Her and her mom both have their shared experiences with men, but they are still open to love. Now, our heroine watched a lot of movies growing up, and she is under the impression that small towns are just very romantic and they're filled with all these different characters, and she just expects that the small town will be very warm and very welcoming to her. So she pitches the idea to her editor. She's a journalist, by the way. And she says that she's going to do this expose, or she's going to do this whole write-up about this small town, and the company agrees with it, so they send her out to the small town. And it's only until that reality slaps her in the face does she realize that she has been romanticizing the small town way too much, and that not everybody in the small town know each other's businesses, know each other, or like each other for even that matter, and they're not always going to be as welcoming as the Hallmark movies depict it as. So she is kind of like left frazzled there, but she meets a handsome man from the small town who also came from a big city, and they kind of hit it off. It's only until she realizes that maybe he has other motives does she second guess herself, and then that is like the main conflict of the book. Now for this one, I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. It does have a 3.4 rating on Goodreads, and I don't know, I enjoyed it. I thought it read a lot like a very indie romance where essentially it's very floofy, it's very lovey-dovey, it's fun, it's nothing that's going to provoke any special emotions or thoughts within you. It's definitely brain candy, and it's written that way in some aspects of it. Although they do dive into deeper issues, particularly on our hero side, where he has to deal with a lot of family trauma and he has to deal with his broken relationship with his father. I still really enjoyed it, and I think you should put this book on your radar if you do see it in your public library. Now, the next book that I did read was this one that was sent to me from the publisher from St. Martin's Press. This one's called Bet on It by Jodi Slaughter. Now, this one essentially follows 2 characters who have really bad anxiety. Like, they just have anxiety disorders, and they are both coping with their anxiety in different ways. And it's kind of cute, but not really, because you kind of feel the emotions of our heroine when we first meet her, which essentially she's dealing with her anxiety in a very public place in the grocery store. Our hero approaches her knowing the signs of what an anxiety attack looks like, and it stands by her and just helps her get through that particular incident. And that's how they kind of meet. But they don't really formally meet until he goes with his grandma to the community center where the residents in this town that they all live in, they play like these board games, particularly bingo. So she is new to bingo, but she finds that playing with a group of elderly people is very calming and very relaxing, and it gives her a place to be in where she can feel more like herself. And then that's where she develops a friendship that turns into a romance with our hero. So the issue that both our characters have to deal with is the fact that our hero has moved away from the small town for a long period of time now and has no plans of staying in the small town at all, and he's only there to visit his grandma because his grandma had an accident and he just wants to take care of her. And then as soon as she's back on her feet, he's out of here. So now they're kind of in this like very sticky friends with benefits situation where the romance, where the feelings are getting involved and they're developing. So that is like the main angst. And I found it to be very raw and very realistic, because I think that if I was in that situation where the hero is hating the small town, has his reasons for why he doesn't want to stay in the small town, because he's like bumping into people from his childhood that has caused him a lot of trauma, I would understand why he would not want to stay and why he would want to leave, and why he particularly doesn't want to get into a relationship where he knows that he's going to hurt someone if he is not honest with them from the start. So I really like this one. I think that the anxiety representation was very accurate. Although I don't have anxiety disorder, I felt that it did a good representation of it from what I can tell. And I think it dove a lot deeper into that disorder and those attacks that made me understand it for someone who is not always exposed to people who have anxiety. So I really recommend you to check this one out. I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars, and I'm so excited to read more Jodi Slaughter books in the future. So the next one that I did read was this one called The Boy with the Bookstore by Sarah Smith. She has a new name now. I think she got married and it's like hyphenated. So now, or it's not hyphenated, but it's called Sarah Evervar Smith. So I completely butchered her name, but nonetheless, Sarah Smith and I have kind of like a rocky relationship. I've read her debut novel. I read her other book, her second book that she wrote. I never read her third book. This is her fourth book, but most of the times her books and we don't mesh well. I give it like maybe a 2 out of 5 stars or a 1 out of 5 stars, and I have to return the book right away because I just think that it's a complete, it shouldn't be on my shelf is what I'm trying to say. And this one, I walked in with very low expectations. I borrowed it from my library through the audiobook, and I was thinking to myself, like, maybe I will like it, maybe I won't like it. I just wanted to give it a try. Anyways, so this one involves a Filipino American heroine. And if for those who don't know, Sarah Smith, I think, is a mix between Caucasian and Filipino. So she likes to do a lot of Asian representation in her romance novels, which I always really appreciate. And this one was really good in the sense that it did a very fantastic representation of what an Asian American family looks like, and for first generation Asian Americans, and how that plays a role into our daily lives. So it essentially follows our heroine, who is a baker, and she has a bakery, and she runs it with her family because her family unfortunately had a really bad mishap with a very horrible financial planner who stole all their savings, and now they're left destitute. But then in walks our heroine, who just basically says, you know, I have some money put aside, we can open a bakery and then we can get everybody back on our feet. So they all collectively work together at this bakery, and then she also has a crush on the boy, like, I think like working across the street from her bakery, who owns a bookstore. And then what actually ends up happening is that the landlord for the both storefronts comes and tells them that he is going to plan to do some renovations. So for a period of time, they're going to have to share one storefront, which means that like half the store is a bakery and then the other half of the store is a bookstore. Now, logistically, it doesn't make sense because I feel like no storefront is going to be big enough to house like both stores and their merchandise and their inventory, but make-believe fiction, it works that way. The main things that a lot of people complained about in the Goodreads reviews are that the fact that the pranks that they both had on each other was very childish. I did think it was very childish. I thought it was kind of very stupid, because what happens is that they were friends at first and then they turn to enemies because they're sharing one storefront and they are stepping on each other's toes, they're getting on each other's nerves, and then they pull pranks on each other because of miscommunication, essentially, and just them being angry with each other for the predicament that they are in. And I just glossed over them. I just ignored them to go down to my like final rating of the book, because I found the Asian representation in this book to be chef's kiss, is spectacular. It was so good that I had to give this one a 4 out of 5 stars and forgive the other junk that was thrown in the book, including the pranks. But don't worry, the pranks do end very earlier on in the book, and then the rest is just like really sweet romantic times, and it was quite spicy as well. Now you guys are probably wondering, like, why did I love it so much and the Asian representation that I have been mentioning. I just felt that, like, the generational trauma, the guilt that our parents have for themselves for not providing for their children, like, that was depicted very well, and I just really liked it. And I think you guys should just, like, pick up this book, not for, like, the romance, but the romance was cute too as well, but just pick it up just to, like, see the Asian representation in it at its finest. I really like this one, and I'm excited to read more of Sarah Smith's book if it includes more Filipino heroines. So the next one that I did pick up is this one called For Butter or Worse by Erin La Rosa. Now this one features two celebrity chefs who co-host a cooking show together on, like, basically the Food Network, and they have, like, an enemies to lovers relationship. They both, like, don't really like each other, but then they are attracted to each other, and then our hero is just a complete douche nozzle in the first half of the book, and he accidentally ends up insulting her on TV, and it ruins, like, each other's reputation, and then she wants to pull out of it, like, she just doesn't want to host a show anymore. But then both PR teams are like, no, you can't do that because it's gonna, like, ruin both your reputations, and then your careers are gonna be over. So then they both forge on with this plan of fake dating. Yeah, I know it sounds like a far stretch, but somehow the author made it work so that we were moving down this plot line where they were both fake dating each other, and that they both miraculously fell in love with each other, and now the fans are in love with, like, this story that they have. A couple things about me is that I don't really like celebrity romances, nor do I really like fake dating tropes, because I find them to be both very unrealistic, and celebrity romances are just boring to me because sometimes the main conflict is always been played out in many, many celebrity romances, such as the fans getting in the way, or publicity getting in the way, or worse, miscommunication getting in the way. But this one was good in a sense that I kept listening to the audiobook and I wasn't too bored. I think I like this one a lot, but more than I should have, because the hero dealt with a lot of anxiety once again. It was a good representation of what an anxiety disorder looks like. He had a lot of panic attacks. He had some mental breakdowns, and he didn't really know how to vocalize it. He didn't really know how to ask for help, and he shut down a part of himself because of it. And then it wasn't only until, like, he learns and he has this character arc where he realizes that he needs to ask people for help, and that he can't just continue living like this because his quality of life is, you know, quickly depleting. So I liked it. It was realistic, but it just wasn't my favorite, and I ended up giving this one a 3 out of 5 stars. I would say that if you guys heard about this book and you guys are curious about this book, I would just say, like, maybe move it down your TBR, but don't kick it off just yet. Okay, so the next book that I read was this one called The Fixer-Upper by Lauren Forsynthe, and this one is, like, a British rom-comedy, and I enjoyed it in the beginning. So in the beginning, it was really fun. Like, it's set up as, like, this really fresh take on chick literature. It essentially followed a heroine who is a girl boss. Like, you know, she's doing real well for herself. She's climbing that corporate ladder. But then it's only until she realizes that she is kind of moving in to her 30s and she is just single. And then her friends tell her that, hey, did you know that every boy that you dated that was, like, a loser when they met you are now very successful after they dumped you or after you dumped them. And then so the idea is that our heroine can fix up really shitty people. So she decides to start a business where she helps out these broken relationships and help coach and mend their relationships while also, like, helping themselves improve on themselves. And it was fun at first, but then it quickly got really boring because, like, we moved on to, like, different couples and different people. It got confusing through the audiobook because we were just jumping through time and space and different characters. And I don't know. I just gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars. I'm a little bit disappointed in it, and I want to see if I would like it more if I read it the second time. But then again, right now, life's too short to reread books that might disappoint me the second time. So if you guys are curious about this novel, I think you guys should leave it towards the bottom of your TBR list. So the next book that I did read is Nothing But the Truth by Holly James. Now this one made me feel like it was based on a movie called like Yes Man or something with Jim Carrey. It's that movie where he always has to say yes and he can't say no. And so this is the exact same idea. So our heroine is a publicist. So all she does is kind of like fabricate stories and tell white lies essentially. So she never really tells the truth, but that's her job. And it's not like she's like harming anybody with her lies, but essentially it's her birthday and she's sitting at a bar, she's drinking, and she makes a birthday wish. And then somehow magical things happen where now she is forever altered in a way that she can never tell lies ever again. And this is very detrimental to her because her job is to tell lies for her celebrity clients, and then now she can't tell lies, and her whole like agency that she works with deals with corporate politics where she always has to, dress in a certain way, act a certain way, behave a certain way. And now she can't stop her mouth from running because all she wants to do is tell people off about like people who insult her looks or people who insult her abilities in the workplace and things like that. So she gets herself into a lot of trouble. But the direction of this book definitely went into another direction that I never thought that it would take. It turned into more of a lean in movement and a Me Too movement because our heroine is sexually harassed in the workplace. And then throughout the whole book, she's kind of like fighting the fight of trying to get her voice heard and trying to get the person who hurt her have that punishment that he deserves. And so it turned into a different way than I expected. I thought it would more lean towards romantic comedy and the fun side. There was romance in it, but it definitely took a back seat. But I still like the romance of it because I thought it was kind of very sweet. But then afterwards, it moved into more of a serious way, which I did appreciate. I don't think you can review a book poorly if the book's like main purpose is to empower a woman to speak up in the workplace. So I ended up giving this one a 4 out of 5 stars because I still enjoyed it and I thought it was super fun in a lot of the different parts. So the next book that I did read was The Decoy Girlfriend by Lillie Vale. Now I read Lillie Vale last year and I remember just really enjoying her romantic comedy. I think it was called The Shoddy Setup or something like that, and it's like dating app and it's like between these two business owners, and it was just like, it was messy, but it was fun. And then so when I walked into The Decoy Girlfriend, I had very low expectations once again because it follows the two tropes, or it follows a trope that I don't like, and then it follows like an aspect that I don't like. It's fake dating, and then it's a celebrity romance. So basically our heroine looks a lot like a celebrity, and when she wants to have a little fun, when she wants to escape her little boring life, she decides to dress up and do her makeup a lot like the celebrity. And then so she likes to go to like these little stores so that she can get like free perks. She likes to go to restaurants and walk in without reservations because people just think that she's a celebrity, and she just basically pretends to be the celebrity. It's only until she gets herself into trouble because the celebrity, the actress that she's pretending to be, catches her and basically says, hey, you know what? Since you look like me, why don't you pretend to be me for a period of time because I don't want to live the celebrity life anymore. And then to be her, she has to pretend to date the boyfriend. And the boyfriend is our hero. And essentially the boyfriend and the celebrity were already like fake dating in the first place. There were no emotions involved. There's no feelings. They're just friends who decided to be together because of both of their publishers forcing them to be together for a movie. So anyways, long story short, they fake date, and then obviously feelings get involved. They fall in love with each other, but then it gets messy because there's like a lot of all of these like other factors that come into play. I really enjoyed it, actually. It surprised me. I really liked it. I thought it was super fun. I thought the romance came naturally. I thought that there was a lot of chemistry between our two characters. I ended up giving this one a 4 out of 5 stars. Definitely put it on your radar. I don't think a lot of people are talking about it yet. And there's like a lot of good representation in this book too as well. Our hero is actually like really, really sweet. Like he cares so much about his family. He is so smart, and he's definitely more than like the Hollywood hunk that everybody depicts him as. But anyways, that is it for all the books that I have read and hopefully you guys have some books to add to your TBR or some books to move down on your TBR pile. And I'll see you guys again next time in a new video. Bye!